Hi folks, you're with us today, Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining us audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the NGO scam. Now we all know that there's been this explosion of NGOs over the last 25 years. Well, not only are there now thousands more NGOs than there were 25 years ago, but these NGOs are lavishly funded, and some of the best paying jobs in Australia today are employees and consultants and so on for the NGOs. So there was a time when the NGOs paid the worst money. There was the private sector paid the best, then the government, and then the NGOs, the charity workers were paid the least. That's completely reversed now. And the more the NGO is dedicated to actual charity work, then the pay and conditions are still quite Spartan. But where the NGO is, although registered as a charity, but where it's engaged in frontline political activism on behalf of the globalists, and the salaries are quite good, by any standard. As I've mentioned many times before, the director of diversity for an NGO can be paid double what a senior civil engineer is paid, someone who's in charge of building a multi-gazillion dollar highway and bridges and roads, and the engineer in charge of that is paid less than the activist at the NGO, which seems completely insane. But that's how the world's been inverted and been turned upside down. But I just want to talk a bit about how at the tactical level, so at the tactical street level, NGOs are created for very specific purposes now. The idea of the all-encompassing NGO that does everything, does this, does that. That's still there. But if there's a specific purpose they want to go and chase, they want to, for example, harass a media station that isn't towing the globalist line, then they're likely to just go out back and create an NGO to go and go and harass and chase that media outlet, harass their advertisers and harass their employees, insert agents provocateurs and saboteurs in effect inside the organisation and do what they can to bring it down and to fuck it up and starve it of funds, maybe try and heavy the banks to not provide banking and financial services, things like that. So okay, so say there's a media outlet that's called XY News, and they're not towing the globalist line. They're not talking about how evil and racist white people are and there are Nazis everywhere. They're not doing that, which is of course the job of any media outlet these days, and given they're all globalist controlled. But here's one that isn't. So now there's the big NGO firms that they don't want to have their name associated with getting too down and dirty in the street. They're happy to do that generally, but they want to build for themselves an image of the all-knowing, godlike organisation. So, but they want to go after this media outlet and just harass them. So they'll create an NGO. They'll call it the Abadabadoo NGO or something. They'll get whatever name they'll call. They'll try and give it a name like We're Against Hate or We're Against Nazis or something. They'll think up some sort of name like that, and then they'll let loose and go after the advertisers and so on. The attack that they'll make will be effectively three-pronged. They'll harass the advertisers of the organisation. They'll start a social media campaign to accuse the media outlet of being Nazis and the trans person committed suicide because of them. They'll try and do all that sort of propaganda. They won't be fact checked by the social media firms. If that particular media outlet tries to defend itself, then their posts will be fact-checked and taken off, so that they really won't be allowed to fight back, but they'll be open slather in the attacks. their advertisers will be. Now, a lot of the advertisers are probably going to be big globalist multinational firms anyway. If not, part of big finance, big pharma, they'll be dependent in some way on big finance and/or big pharma, and they don't want to, irritate the wrong people. So they'll know that the attacks are coming from the puppet masters at the other end of the town, the downtown. So these multinational firms will, in the face of really harassment, that they should either take those idiots to court or they should tell them to fuck off. Instead, they'll go down like a sack of shit and pull their advertising away from the media firm. It's simply not worth the fight. So you stand on the principle of we're not going to let those guys slap us around, or we're not going to be pushed around by those idiots. So why should we change our corporate behaviour just to suit a couple of street fanatics who are getting in our face? They won't do that. Instead, they cave, and I'm staggered at how quickly these outfits cave to a couple of punk ass bums that are just giving them some pretty childlike harassment, really, and engaging in illegal behaviour. But for some reason, the government won't step in. All the government legal apparatus that typically would step in and go after these harassers, for some reason stands on the sidelines, almost as if they've been advised in advance. We're going to do this, but don't you worry about it. You just keep out the way. You go after those damn white supremacist Nazis. That's who you need to go after. Don't worry about what we're doing. The illegal behaviour that we're doing is a good thing because we're fighting Nazis. Hitler! And so the multinational firms pull their advertising away. So there's a few things that they do. I mean, the globalists, they want to come after you. If you're an individual, they'll do what they can to deny you employment or something. But say in the case of a business, they'll try and either could do one or both. They'll either try and cut off your income, advertising in this case if you're a media firm, or they'll try and cut off your banking services by going to the big international banks or any bank and saying, look, deny these guys. So they'll try and strangle you in a couple of ways. There, if you've got a viable business that's untouchable, where they can't sort of directly harass you, or your customers are so widespread out that they can't really get to them either, then they'll go to the banking. So they'll go to the narrowest point of choke that they can find. And with the media company, it's their revenues, of course, advertising revenues. But if they couldn't get to that, they'd go after the banking services in the way they have after Nigel Farage, because they can't choke him off in any other way. Or Trump, for that matter. Trump's a rich man, so they'll try and hit him in other directions because he's too wealthy to get at. They can't say we'll choke off his income. He's got he's already independently wealthy. So. But they create this boutique NGO. Now I'm looking at one NGO here. Now clearly it's a subdivision of a much larger NGO, and they've created this NGO. Now I just want to sort of illustrate how much government and multinational globalist firms, globalist controlled government, multinational globalist firms, the legal system, and the NGO system are effectively integrated in terms of pursuing the globalist objective and the globalist program. They're integrated to the point where they're near seamless, for goodness sakes. So the big NGO that's funded to the tune of billions a year, they get NGO, they get United Nations money, Soros money comes in from all directions. They're radically activist, but somehow they're allowed to continue existence as a charity, which is an outrage in itself. But they create the sub NGO. It purports to be another independent NGO, but it's not. It's just an offshoot of this bigger one. Now, on the day that within seconds of them registering the NGO as a charity, they're given charity status by the tax office on some lightning fast track administrative process that no one else can get. So clearly it's a scam from word one. So they get this charity status, and so they decide, okay, we're going to go after this media company that isn't towing the line. we need to create a separate NGO because we don't want to affect the image of this bigger NGO. We'll create a separate NGO, and they get once they decide they do it, they get lightning fast approval from the tax office to be registered as a charity. But all the resources of the financial resources, the staff, the employees, the access to government, all these sort of things are provided by the if you like the parent NGO. And this subdivision NGO goes off and then has access to all the resources. So they can get into doors that startup NGO wouldn't have a snowball's chance of getting into. So they're able to immediately conduct a very successful harassment campaign against the advertisers and against others. Now they do the harassment campaign, then they try and get to particularly people in human resources department, women in particular, get to, did you know your organisation is helping Nazis, fascist Nazis, Hitler? And this is a young woman who's been told all through high school and through her gender studies degree that the world's full of white supremacist, fascist Nazis. She's a moron, and she said, "Oh, is that right? Yeah." And so, she's been on the climate change protests. She's been on the, all human beings are legal or something. She's been on all that sort of stuff. So when somebody comes to her and gets to her and says, "Look, your organisation's, supporting Nazis. Hitler was seen going out the back door just yesterday. But you can do something about this. There's a few people we've noticed. You've got a vacancy in the firm for I don't know, a writer or assistant producer or a office general dog's body or something. You've got some position vacant there. Here is a list of people we'd like you to employ." And then they can start seeding activists and disruptors and saboteurs and informants. So they then got informants inside. So when one of the announcers, news announcers or media personalities they don't like, or they want to particularly target, they can gather personal information on them, their habits, where they go, what they do, who their wives and children are, who their boyfriends or girlfriends are, whatever. They just gather information and then feed that back to programs they're putting together that otherwise would be secret or at least confidential inside the organisation. They're able to get those, and the NGOs then ready to start a besmirching campaign against them and so on. So these are the ways that they come at you and attack you and so on. I speak from personal experience. I mean, I'm going back some time here, but there was we used this is a firm I was at. I was the EVP at this place, and we used a labour hire, not a labour hire firm, like a temping agency, I think they were called at the time, and we used them to sometimes fill in for some of the admin staff that were, say, going on annual leave or something like that. So somehow someone got to them and got to this temping agency and got them to put in activists to come and work at, and they may have only been there for a few weeks, but get activists to come in and work at the firm, have a look around. Now, it turns out all the sort of department heads we had, and this was more than 20 years ago, but all the departments heads we had were all straight white males. This is before the mass migration kicked off in Australia. But bear in mind, at the time I was doing a massive amount of international travelling, and so was again used to being the only white guy in the room or the hotel or the restaurant. So I had no issue with any of that. But the mass migration thing, just on a was I concerned about the black or the brown person or something? That was never an issue for me. But so they got an activist in, and then the activist had arranged a time when I was there and I wasn't on the phone and I wasn't in a meeting, and then they arranged a call to put through from some government department or government quango. It was supposed to be, the Department for Equality or some shit like that. I've never even heard of it, and got put through the call to me. And so, somebody wants to talk. Said they want to talk to you. Says the activist. So the activist has managed to wangle herself onto the reception. She's made sure that I'm available again, not in a meeting or anything like that. Then call the activist, and then put the activist through to me, but as an ambush phone call, not being clear what it was about. So, somebody wants to talk to you. I think it might be a customer, a big customer of the company. And, well, I better take the call, and that sort of stuff. So it turns out it was just someone who bails me up straight away, and had details and had knowledge of the company that wouldn't be possible without inside information. So that's a small illustration of how these NGOs do it. They seed people, get to people, and they seed people in there as activists. And you may not know that they're activists, but they're all the time feeding information back to the central activist group to ensnare you or intimidate you or otherwise, engage in forms of, whether it be emotional or whatever form of blackmail they can bring to bear. But this is what the NGO. So NGOs are being created purpose specific now to go after and harass and intimidate and threaten and accuse and all that sort of thing. Various organisations that aren't towing the globalist line, and to me it's a step up in what they're doing. Like they're moving it up a notch. The globalists are now thinking, we've got to really slap down. We've got to slap down anyone that disagrees with us, deplatform, deny them banking services, accusing them of being Nazis and racists and white supremacists. That's kind of losing its bite a bit. So we've got to go up one more. Now, I just want if you just think in terms of tyrannical government, and whenever you've got a government by ideology, you've automatically got tyranny, automatically have tyranny. And which is where we are today. Now, governments tyrannical governments take power through revolution. They've got no compunction with killing people. It's just part of what the revolution's all about. The Bolshevik Revolution, the French Revolution, and so on. But when it's not by armed revolution, which is being opposed from above, as we can see in the West today by stealth and deceit and treachery, then it's a little bit different. But we're now at the stage where, and have been for a little bit of time, we're stage where the deplatforming, the cancelling, the denying banking services, denying employment, these sorts of things, harassing your customers so they won't do business with you, all that sort of stuff. So there's only one more step to go now, and that's killing people that don't agree with you. And I don't know. I don't think we're that far away from it now. And that is very scary. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.